Cinnamon. What exactly is cinnamon? Now, there are two types of cinnamon. There is the cinnamon that you all know very well, which is a plant that is native to southern China, Vietnam, and the Indonesian archipelago. And the cinnamon that you use in your cinnamon scrolls and your muffins and all those beautiful, lovely, sweet things is also sometimes referred to as baker's cinnamon and Dutch cinnamon. It has got the name Dutch cinnamon because the Dutch, when they were in the Indonesian archipelago, they actually exported a lot of that cinnamon to Europe, and so it was often then referred to as Dutch cinnamon because it was the ones that the Dutch most traded in. This is a beautiful cinnamon with a lovely deep flavour profile, and it works very well in baking as well, and that's why it's called baker's cinnamon. The reason it works well in baking is because of its strength of flavour. The high heat of baking doesn't tend to destroy the flavour profile. The other cinnamon is Mexican cinnamon. Now, this might sound a little bit strange, but Mexican cinnamon actually comes from Sri Lanka. So how come? Well, the reason is that because the Sri Lankans export so much of this grade of cinnamon to Mexico, they call it Mexican cinnamon. Mexican cinnamon comes from a different plant to the cinnamon that you are most used to. And this one is called a Cinnamomum zeylanicum. And the part that is used is the underneath layer of bark. It's quite an interesting process whereby long branches are harvested, the outer bark is scraped off, the underneath layer of bark, the bit that's technically called the agissa, this is very carefully peeled off, and these are pieces that are only paper thin. These pieces are peeled off, put in the sun for a few hours where they will start to curl, and then they are put together into long cinnamon quills that look a little bit like a giant cigar. You can always tell the Mexican cinnamon because when you look at it in cross-section, you'll see it's made up of lots of concentric layers of paper-thin bark, very like a cigar. Where your cinnamon that you're most familiar with, this will come in all different shapes and sizes. Sometimes a small quill, which is a single scroll of bark, and sometimes in larger pieces. So why the difference between the two? Well, I mentioned the benefits of the cinnamon that you use most. The Sri Lankan cinnamon, or the Mexican cinnamon as it's known here, is the one that you use when you want a more delicate cinnamon flavour. You don't want it to be too overpowering. The Mexicans use it a lot in their chocolate, so in something like a mole poblano, you will find that they will be using the Mexican cinnamon because that flavour profile will complement best with the other foods. If you are, say, poaching some fruit in champagne, so, poach some pears in champagne for breakfast, lovely thing to do, and you want to flavour that with cinnamon, use the Mexican cinnamon instead of the standard one because you will find that the more delicate flavour will go well with the delicate flavour of the pears. So it's a different flavour profile, something that's a little more delicate, and of course very important when you're doing any of your Mexican cooking. So don't forget, two different types of cinnamon, the standard one that you're used to and the Mexican cinnamon.